There is a tailor in Seoul who trained under a Neapolitan master. He learned to sew a spalla camicia shoulder by hand on a bespoke suit. He learned to pad a floating canvas chest, including hand-padded lapels, in the same motion with the same thread, using the same techniques that have existed on the streets of Naples for a century. Then he came home to Korea, opened a small atelier, and started charging half the price of the Italian houses that taught him, while producing luxury menswear that some of the most respected critics in the world now say is better. That tailor is not alone. He is part of a quiet movement that started decades ago in the back rooms of Seoul's Apgujeong district, and it is now rewriting the rules of luxury tailoring in a way that the Italian houses, Brioni, Kiton, Cesare Ottolini, Isaia, Zegna, are only beginning to understand. The global suit game has a new contender. Italy just has not accepted it yet. This is the story of how Korea quietly became one of the most formidable forces in luxury menswear, and why Italian tailors have no real answer. To understand what Korea is threatening, you have to understand what Italy actually built, because the Italian tailoring tradition is not a marketing story. It is a genuine, centuries-deep system of craft. Brioni was founded in Rome in 1945, the year the war ended, and within a decade it was dressing American presidents, James Bond, and the architects of post-war European finance. Kiton, operating out of 15 square miles of Naples, employs over 500 craftspeople and uses a construction process so labor-intensive that a single jacket takes 25 hours of handwork. Ermenegildo Zegna controls its own wool farms in Australia, its own fabric mills in Piedmont, and its own retail operations across 40 countries. These are not boutiques. They are vertically integrated empires built on a single idea that Italian tailoring represents the highest expression of masculine dress. For 70 years, the world agreed. The pillars of that reputation were real and specific. First, construction. The Italian tradition, particularly the Neapolitan variant, centers on full canvas construction, where a layer of horsehair canvas is hand-stitched to the jacket's chest piece. That's what gives a bespoke Italian suit its sculptural, living quality. It moves with the body, it breathes, it improves with wear. The alternative is fused construction, where industrial glue bonds the layers together, and that is what nearly every mass-market suit uses. The difference is not subtle. It is the difference between a garment and an appliance. Second, fabric. Italian mills supply the finest suiting cloth in the world. Vitale Barberis Canonico, founded in 1663 in the Italian Alps, produces Super 120s and Super 150s fabrics so refined they are used by tailors on every continent. Loro Piana sources cashmere and vicuna from animals few people will ever see. The raw material feeding the Italian tailoring tradition is genuinely extraordinary. Third, and perhaps most importantly, fit philosophy. The Italian school, particularly the soft-shouldered, high-armholed Neapolitan cut, prioritizes the natural human form over structure. Where the British tradition, what you know as Savile row, builds the suit outward from a firm foundation of canvas and padding, the Italian tradition drapes around the body, allowing movement, comfort, and a certain ease that reads, to a trained eye, as effortless wealth. This is what Italy built. And for most of the 20th century, no one came close to dismantling it. Korea's relationship with the Western suit is not a recent development. H.Y. Taylor, one of Seoul's oldest bespoke houses, has been operating on the same street in Jeong District since 1932, 13 years before Brioni even opened its doors. The Korean War brought an influx of American military officers who needed their dress uniforms altered, and the tailors of Seoul learned quickly. By the 1970s, a generation of Korean craftspeople had built a domestic tailoring culture that served the country's own rapidly expanding business class. But the modern chapter, the one that explains what is happening right now, begins in Naples. The first Korean tailor to train formally under a Neapolitan master was Jeon Byung-ha, who apprenticed with Antonio Pasquariello, the same craftsman who trained some of the tailors now working in Tokyo's most respected bespoke houses. This detail matters enormously. Korea did not develop its own tailoring tradition in isolation and then compare it to Italy's. Korea went directly to the source. Korean tailors studied in Naples. They learned the spalla camicia shoulder construction from the people who invented it. They studied the suppressed waist, the quarter-lined interior, the open buttonhole hand-sewn with silk thread. They absorbed the Italian tradition at its deepest level, then brought it home. What grew from that transfer of knowledge was remarkable. Around 2013, Seoul's bespoke scene underwent a sudden and significant awakening. New ateliers began opening across the city's southern districts. A new generation of Korean tailors, many of them trained in both Europe and Japan, began attracting clients from the city's expanding finance and technology sectors. These were not men who needed to dress conservatively for a corporate culture, as in Japan. They were men who chose to wear bespoke suits because they genuinely wanted them, and that distinction produced a different kind of tailoring culture, one driven by aesthetic choice rather than professional obligation. The houses that emerged from this period have names now well known to anyone who follows international menswear seriously. B&Tailor built a following that brought visiting clients from London, New York, and Paris, people who specifically traveled to Seoul to commission work they could not get at home at any price, and who began booking appointments around B&Tailor's international trunk shows, which the house now runs across multiple cities each year. Assisi, operating out of a beautifully designed atelier in Seoul, produces structured half-canvas work that Simon Crompton's Permanent Style, arguably the most respected bespoke menswear publication in the English language, described as achieving a standard of fit that is extremely good. Luca Museo has built an international clientele through the kind of consistent, detail-focused craftsmanship that typically takes decades and multiple generations to develop. Korea had those decades. It had simply been doing this work quietly, without the global marketing infrastructure of the Italian houses, and without the name recognition that comes from dressing European royalty and Hollywood films. Set a B&Tailor commission next to an equivalent Kiton, and the gap that was supposed to exist, the unbridgeable quality difference that justifies the Italian premium, is not there. Start with construction. The Korean houses working at the highest level produce full floating canvas work, hand-stitched with the same techniques and the same materials used in Naples. The chest piece moves, the jacket breathes. There is no glue, no shortcut, no industrial fusing. This is not an approximation of Italian bespoke construction. It is the same construction, learned from the same sources. Move to fabric. Korean tailors source from the same European mills as their Italian counterparts. B&Tailor clients regularly commission suits in cloth from drapers, from Loro Piana's fabric range, from the same Vitale Barberi's Canonico Super 130s and Super 150s selections you would find in a Neapolitan cutting room. The raw material is identical because the supply chain is identical. Italian tailors do not have exclusive access to Italian fabric. Anyone with the relationships can order it. Consider FIT. This is where the case for Korean tailoring becomes genuinely uncomfortable for the Italian establishment, because Korea's national culture of precision engineering, the same culture that produces electronics and automobiles to the tightest tolerances in the world, translates directly into pattern cutting and garment construction. Korean tailors are, by reputation among those who have experienced both traditions, extraordinarily precise. The fitting process at a Seoul atelier, from the basted fitting where a roughly assembled shell is tried on the client before the garment is ever finished, through to the final fitting, is methodical in a way that reflects an entire cultural approach to exactness. Clients who have commissioned work in both Naples and Seoul consistently report that the Korean fitting process is more thorough, more systematic, and more consistently accurate across multiple garments. Then there's price. A commission at one of Seoul's top bespoke houses typically costs between 40% and 60% less than a comparable garment from a Neapolitan house of equivalent standing. Not because the Korean tailors are cutting corners, but because the labor market in Seoul is different from the labor market in Naples. And because the Korean houses are not carrying the weight of the Italian brand's global marketing operations, their flagship boutiques in Geneva and Dubai, or the luxury conglomerate overhead that has quietly swallowed many of the great Italian names. Brioni is owned by Kering, Zegna is publicly listed. Even the Neapolitan independents operate within an Italian fashion ecosystem that has spent the last 2 decades inflating prices at a rate entirely disconnected from any corresponding increase in craft quality. A A 2024 Italian court ruling, the same case that exposed Loro Piana producing garments in unauthorized Lombardy workshops, made this inflation explicit. The court found that a jacket retailing for €4,000 carried a production cost of approximately €140. That gap between cost and price is not craftsmanship. It is a brand tax, and Korean tailoring does not charge it. If Italian tailoring were responding strategically to the rise of Korean bespoke, this story would look different. But the Italian luxury establishment is not focused on Seoul. It is focused on survival. In 2025, German investment firm Berenberg declared that the luxury supercycle is officially over, only the third time in 30 years that global luxury revenues have declined for 2 consecutive years. Gucci, the most recognizable name in Italian fashion, posted a 25% sales decline in the first quarter of 2026. Kering, Gucci's parent company, reported a 14% overall revenue drop. The LVMH fashion division fell 5%. The brands that built their reputations on Italian design and Italian manufacturing are contracting at a pace that has forced widespread redundancies, store closures, and, in several documented cases, the judicial administration proceedings that exposed their supply chain scandals in the first place. While Loro Piana, Dior, Valentino, and Armani are navigating court-ordered oversight of their manufacturing practices, while Italian legislators are drafting emergency bills to salvage what is left of the credibility of the Made in Italy label, the Korean tailoring tradition continues to build. Woo Youngmi, the Seoul-based menswear house founded in 2002, has been showing at Paris Men's Fashion Week since 2003, consistently, without interruption, for over 20 years. Seoul now sits beside Milan and Paris as a recognized fashion capital. The Asia-Pacific region accounts for 38.6% of the global tailoring services market, the largest single regional share in the world. The Italian houses are not losing to Korea in a single dramatic confrontation. They are losing the way all dominant traditions eventually lose, gradually, then suddenly, through a compounding accumulation of compromises that eroded the very standards that made them worth paying for in the first place. There is a version of this story where Italy retrenches, recommits to genuine craft, and holds its position at the summit of global menswear. That version is still possible. The tradition is real. The knowledge exists. The artisans in Naples and Rome, who actually know how to sew a floating canvas chest piece, are still working. But that's not the direction the industry has moved. The direction the industry has moved is toward conglomerate ownership, inflated price points, court-documented supply chain exploitation, and a slow uncoupling of the luxury brand experience from the luxury product reality. Korea moved in the opposite direction. It sent its tailors to Naples to learn the craft, brought that knowledge home, and built a bespoke tradition that charges less, fits better, and makes no promises it cannot keep. The Italian tailoring tradition invented the standard. Korea studied it for 70 years, improved on it in measurable ways, and is now taking the clientele, one commission at a time, quietly, without announcing itself, that Italian luxury is no longer able to hold. That's not a hostile takeover. It is just the natural consequence of what happens when a craft tradition gets commodified by the people who were supposed to protect it, while somewhere else, people who genuinely love the craft are simply doing the work. The world's most discerning suit buyers have already noticed. The question is how long it takes everyone else to catch up.